welcome back to another PTCI exclusive program. Today we're in Perryton, Texas at the Museum of the Plains for the Corson Archaeological Research sponsored Stone Age Fair, 8th annual. Today we're going to talk to some of the collectors, some of the enthusiasts, some of the visitors. We're going to see what their artifacts are all about, try to find out what their favorites were, maybe where they found them, and learn something. So join us. Okay, well, the first interview of the day, and it's right near the door, convenient. We've got Brad Sanders here. He's from Fletcher, Oklahoma, and as I walked up to see what you had, you were telling a story about maybe your son finding something you were finding. Can you convey that to our...
Yeah, this one right here, we were on a dig in Central Texas, and the guy running the dig had come up to talk to us, and he saw the base end of this just sticking out.
Oh,
and he said,
with the fletching, with the notching out there.
Yeah, with the notch just sticking out of the dirt.
Ooh, intriguing.
And he said, you know, what's this? And I got excited, and my 5-year-old son was with me, and I said, hey, boy, come pull this out. If I pull it out, it's going to be broken. So he came and he started pulling it out of the dirt real slow, and it was all there, and just made both our day.
Hunter, did you get a good picture of it?
Yeah, we got some good pictures of it while it was still in the dirt, and then I got a video of him pulling it out. So
nice. And now was that he was a 5 then?
Yeah, he's 5 then.
How long ago was that?
That was last summer.
Oh, okay. So he's still pretty young.
Yeah, he just turned 6.
Does he have the bug? Is he?
Yeah, he's got the bug. Seriously.
Hard to keep him in the house.
Right, and he's got 3 other brothers that don't care anything about it. But
see, that's always the way it
bit
goes.
him.
There's always 1 or 2 in a family that continue the collecting bug,
right?
And the searching bug. That's a great story, and that's a great artifact. Tell me about some of your favorites. Tell me something interesting about what you have here. It's a really pretty collection, by the way.
Well, thank you. Let me see. This here is an etched bone bead that came from Fredericksburg, Texas.
Oh, wow.
And this is a gorget that came from there. It's the only one that I have.
This one here?
Yeah, they would wear it. Some people argue whether or not it was wore as a charm around their neck or something. Mm-hmm. They don't know, but they're rare. They're rare to find whole.
Oh, I bet.
So.
What's the farthest away that you've ever found something?
I don't have it here, but it's in Comstock down by Del Rio on the Devil's River.
I don't know where that's at.
It's by the border of Mexico.
Oh, okay.
It's way down.
Down by San Antonio, somewhere down?
Southwest of San Antonio.
Oh, wow.
Way southwest.
Way south. What's your favorite piece that you have here? Can you tell us about it?
Yeah. My favorite piece I have here, there's actually 2 of them. I have this is an atlatl weight, which is a throwing stick.
Right.
And they would tie this onto a stick, and they would throw their spears. Mm-hmm. And it just added weight, which added thrust.
Right.
And velocity to the spear when they throw it. And this is a 9 to 10,000 year old Holland point, and it's the best thing I have in my collection.
Holland point. Now, what? I don't think I know that term. I know Folsom. I know.
Perino named the Holland after a cache found in Illinois, the Holland cache. There's 10 or so associated together, and anyway, they're 9 to 10,000 years old. They're early archaic. So
that's awesome. Does it feel like gold in your hand?
Yeah, they're
My goodness.
That one probably was never even used.
It doesn't look like it has any damage to it.
No, it's perfect condition.
That's really pretty.
I'll probably never find anything that nice again.
Oh, never say never. If you keep looking, you might.
Well, they're hard to come by that good.
So now you say your son's got the bug. Is he not here today?
No, he's not here today. We're from Southwest Oklahoma. It's a 4-hour drive for us to get here.
Right.
And with the other guys that came with me, and then all of the stuff, there just wasn't room for them to come along.
Now, is this your buffalo head?
Yeah, this is a bison skull.
Where did we find this?
Comanche County, Oklahoma.
Comanche County, okay.
Yeah. Actually, that day I found 7 bison skulls. 2 were whole
wow.
and 5 were broke. And this is a bear skull that I found in Comanche County, Oklahoma.
Oh, neat. Wow. Well, you've got a great collection here, and I've enjoyed listening to the stories. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Thanks for your time.
You bet. Okay, so we just talked to Brad, and now we've got Chad. Chad Myers. I got it right. Chad, where are you from?
Calvesta, Kansas.
Calvesta, Kansas. And I was talking to you along with Scott Brzezowski. We were talking about some crystals, but we'll talk about that in a little bit. You were pointing me to something that you have here of interest.
Yeah, these 2 sites here is basically what I grew up doing in archaeology. The first thing I ever found was an Allen cache, one of the only Allen caches ever found. It was this point here and these 4 pieces on the corner and these 2 uniface blades here. And this is all from one site on our ranch that it's the hill just north of our house.
So this is up near Dodge City?
It's near Calvesta. It's out in the middle of nowhere, basically. You know where a town called Ravenna is at?
I do not.
Yeah, it's an old ghost town. And basically I live out in that area, and all these points came from that spot.
What do you estimate the years to be? How old are these?
This is a multicultural site, so you've got Allen, you've got Cody, you've got First View, you've got Hell Gap, you've got pretty much everything in here. The earliest point is this Calf Creek, which is archaic. It's one of 4 Calf Creeks ever found in western Kansas.
Oh, wow.
And then the rest of this is all 8,000 to 10,000 years old.
So you're actually talking about, when you said the term multicultural, this is several thousand years separating these sites, right?
Yeah, about 4,000 to 8,000 years ago, so about 4,000 year difference.
Isn't that neat?
Yeah.
And they're all in the same place. Mm-hmm. So those people inhabited the same area over and over. Do you think that they left and came back, or was it just generational?
It was generational. Every year they probably came out there hunting and camped in the same spot, and they used that place to jump bison. We found bison skulls off the side of the cliff just below. So.
Oh, so then that's the thing where they would push them off?
Yeah.
They would get killed and...
Yeah, that's where most of the older stuff, this is Clovis and Folsom, which is 13,000 to 12,000 years old, 11,000 years old, and all this is off the same site as this as well. So.
Wow, that's really That's really big. That's
Yeah.
really nice. Now, what is that?
See, these are things I don't know. They carried these into the site from wherever they were traveling from, which is the same thing as the quartz crystals, which quartz crystals aren't found in western Kansas hardly ever.
Right.
So this is some type of dinosaur tooth.
Right, yes.
Possibly a shark that they found and they hauled into the site. Tools like that.
Is this an egg?
Yeah, petrified egg.
That's really cool. Are you getting that tight on the egg? That is awesome. Wonder what
Yeah.
kind of...
No idea. I've never had anybody look at the egg and the teeth and stuff, but this is some type of I'm assuming it's just some type of little sea fossil, out of the limestone. So, but
Found it in Kansas.
yeah, all this is western Kansas.
That's crazy.
And that's the same thing as where the quartz crystals all come from that
Okay,
site.
now this is what was piquing my interest earlier. I'm kind of a rock hound, and I love seeing the crystals, and anytime I find one, I pick it up because I'm a nerd that way. Now,
Yeah.
tell us about these. May I hold one?
Yes, you go ahead.
Sure.
All these were found in one circle at the very tip of the edge of the cliff that drops off above the bison kill. And there's only one artifact in the whole site that's made out of this quartz crystal I've found so far, and that's a Cody knife right here, which is about 8,000 to 10,000 years old.
So they actually made an artifact, a tool, out of a piece of
these.
quartz crystal.
Yeah.
So what do you speculate, or what do you think? How did they get these? Did they carry them from somewhere else?
They had to
or-
carry them from Wyoming, eastern Colorado, or probably western Colorado, honestly, because that's the nearest place, or maybe even the Wichita Mountains, Oklahoma. But that's about the only place you can find this stuff. So, and the reason that they use this so much, it was kind of a sacred stone to them.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and they had to you could resharpen it over and over and over because it's so hard. It's the second hardest thing to diamond, So
I didn't know that. I thought they were somewhat brittle and malleable.
no, they're harder than granite even. So,
Oh, wow.
yeah.
What's
that's
the
why they
favorite
carried
piece that
it.
you have? What's the one that you think is the neatest of your crystals that you have here?
Probably just this one here because it has the huge overshot flakes, which getting any flake to flake off a piece of quartz is almost impossible. So however they did that.
So what you're saying is this has actually been worked. Someone has chipped this,
Yeah.
and this part has actually come out, and they've used it as a point or
Yeah, they
knife
use
or-
it to make a tool of some kind.
That's interesting. This is the first time I've ever heard of this. This is, we've been coming here for what, 6, 7, 8 years, and I've never seen
Yeah.
or even thought of this.
Yeah,
as
it's
being-
very rare. There's only been one site in Oklahoma that's had this stuff found on it, and very few across the high plains. So,
Now, do you go back to this site and look for more?
yeah, my house is literally maybe a quarter of a mile from it. So,
Lucky.
yeah,
Man,
yeah.
that's awesome. Okay, what else do you got to show us, Brad? Chad.
And this is my, this is probably my best frame of paleo. Some of these I've acquired over the years as well from good friends of mine. I just got this one. Been after the guy for 8 years, and he finally decided to sell it to me. He lives just about 20 minutes from me, and a cow stepped on it, and he found both pieces and glued
You're
it back
kidding.
together. Yeah,
Oh, so he found this on his property.
yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah, all of these are from that area, except this is only one from eastern Colorado, this one's from North Dakota, and this one's Montana. The rest are all southwest Kansas.
And of these, how many did you find?
I found, basically these are me and my grandpa's finds.
Okay.
So basically all except these 3 here.
Awesome.
So-
How long have you been a collector, a hound?
Yeah, my grandpa got me started when we were about, I was probably 5 or 6.
And you're how old now?
23.
23, so you've been in it for a while.
Yeah.
I'd like to hear those stories. It's important to have people that still do it and want to do it and are protecting what they find. You know
Oh
what
yeah.
I mean?
Yeah,
Now, do you document your finds? Do you have any type of ledger you keep?
Yeah, all the time. Yeah, I document everything I find, and I work with a lot of professional archaeologists, and will share what I find. They come look at this stuff as well and document it too. So,
Now, what did your pros say about this?
about these,
Yeah.
they were just as baffled as Scott and everybody else about it.
Right.
It's something that's never been seen before, so it's pretty interesting.
So you should write a report or a deal, an essay about it.
Yeah.
Maybe start a new line of speculation.
Yeah, there's always little pieces of quartz crystal found in every site, every paleo site, almost every paleo site, but this quantity and this size is something unheard of. So.
That's really cool. Okay, so now we know some about your collection and some of your oddities. Tell me your favorite story. What's your favorite story about archaeology or collecting or a find?
Let's see, the favorite one, probably, let's see. I'm going to say it was probably whenever I found my first arrowhead, which I'm not sure if I even have it here or not, but it was a little tiny white Scotsbluff that I found in our yard of our house. And our house is built on an 8,000-year-old transitional archaic site, which is also rare for western Kansas. You don't find archaic points very often
Now
there.
explain that to me. Transitional archaic site. So
It's where they went from paleo to archaic.
Okay.
So a lot of this stuff in this frame here is paleo stuff. and that was all found in our yard, around our barn, around our house.
All this?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. And then this frame here is basically what we've found, and everything that's washed off all around the house and everything. So these are a lot of undocumented types for the area. A lot of people don't know exactly the names for all of these. And the materials are also kind of different compared to what you would say for
there's
paleo.
There's a mishmash of everything there.
Yeah.
Okay, so it's a transitional site from prehistoric to historic now.
It's from paleo to archaic.
I'm sorry, yeah.
Yeah.
Have you found any metal artifacts?
No,
Did
no.
you
No,
transition into
it goes from 12,000 years ago to roughly 6 to 5,000 years ago.
And
is
then
how old it
something
is.
happened and they quit coming.
And they quit coming there. Yeah.
So, all right, I
But
gotcha.
we found bones and trash pits where they've had camel teeth to bison teeth to all kinds of stuff they've thrown away.
Camel teeth.
Yeah. Camels were here during the Pleistocene, so it was during the paleo times, probably Clovis.
Interesting. Now, I wonder what happened to make them stop coming.
You know, you never know.
Drought?
Drought's a big part of it. There was a huge drought in the area during the archaic time, which is why you don't see archaic cultures in western Kansas, because they moved out. So the fact that some lived there and stayed, there must have been a spring, good enough to keep them, some of the wildlife there in the area.
What were the natives, did they have a name? Were they, I'm thinking of it in simplistic terms like Cherokee or Apache or Navajo, Comanche, whatever.
Not for these tribes. These are way older than that. A lot of these have, like I said, are undocumented. They've never even been seen before. So
Have you ever tried to reach out to any of the tribes and show them what you're finding and say, they would maybe say, oh, I know exactly what that is. That comes from my ancestry. I understand that.
the only points that are from the time that the tribes that everybody else would think about, 1700 back even to 1300 or so, are these like Washita points and stuff like that is what they use. But this stuff is 13,000 years ago. They don't really even know about that.
I was just trying to figure in my head if like American cultures, as they sort of move and transition into different things, if natives, like a Cherokee now might have been something that they, called different back then. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I don't know if it works that way or not.
No, the tribes, whenever that developed was in the last, 1,000 years or so. Before that, they didn't have tribes for all this stuff. They went by what we know now. All we can tell is it's just by the culture, by the types of the points they made and where they were found at.
Awesome.
Is how we document that now. Yeah.
Anything else you want to leave our viewers on the way out?
No, that's pretty much it. There's one more thing. This site here, I just acquired these pieces from a lady. Her uncle found these in Gaines County, Texas, and this is all from a Folsom site, which finding any Folsom site is rare, but all these pieces together is extremely rare. So
Right, anything Folsom is relatively rare, isn't it?
yeah,
That's really pretty.
yeah.
And these are drills?
Yeah, these are Folsom tools, drills. They basically everything in this site. They had a tool for everything they needed, and you don't find that much in sites nowadays.
What do you think this is?
I don't know. Maybe some type of weight. It's just something that they had picked up and carried in, and then he picked up as well whenever he was hunting it. So
Feel lucky to have it, huh?
yeah, definitely. She was a really nice lady and everything. So
That's cool.
yeah, when I went to buy this quarantine knife, she goes, "Well, I have some arrowheads. You want to come by and look at them?" I'm like, "Yeah, sure." And so that's how I got those. But
Awesome. Well, I really appreciate you telling us all about this.
yeah, no
It
problem.
was
Yeah.
very, very interesting. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Yep. Thank you.
We have with us now Myra Westfall, and this is the other half of Tom Westfall, who we've spoken to before, I think twice maybe over the years. She's got an amazing collection here. What's one of your favorites?
So my favorite is this Eden Point, which it's probably one of my favorites because I found it.
Oh, that usually is one of the things. So we're looking at this one right here.
Right.
And tell us where you found it.
So I found it in a dry creek drainage in eastern Colorado, the Rickery Creek drainage, after some flooding. And one of the reasons that it's my favorite is as we were looking for treasures, Tom was in the riverbed and said, come down here, there's a good place to look, there's good gravel. And it's like, I'm okay. And I was kind of up on a shelf where it had flooded and there was some vegetation in and out, and it's like, I'm okay. And he said, no, come down here and look. And it's, I did my thing, and then a few minutes later I went, oh, and so he was.
What part was out? What part was out? Was the whole thing just laying there?
The whole thing was laying there, and actually when I looked over and I saw it glinting, and it looked like a large quartz crystal. And I thought, wow, that is the biggest quartz crystal I have ever seen. And then as I got closer, I could see that it was an Eden Point, and it was just very awesome.
It is. So it says 9,500 to 7,600
BP, which is before present.
Okay. So that makes it the prehistoric or the archaic? Or
It makes it the Paleo era prehistoric.
Prehistoric, gotcha. Yeah, that's a really pretty piece. This is really pretty.
Yes, that's an Alberta point, and it was found in the 40s. Actually, my son got this collection from an old timer that we want those collections to continue and to
Absolutely.
be together. So he had the privilege of acquiring that, and it was in a field, which is unusual to find something that big I guess in the 40s. And it was broken in, as you can see, several pieces, probably by a plow. They're pretty fresh breaks.
Or as we learned, it could have been a cow. Cows step on them
That's
too.
true. That's true.
We just learned that a while ago.
But the cool thing about this Alberta piece, so if we come down here, it is very similar to this Alberta piece, which is from the Hudson Ming site in Nebraska. So made out of the same lithic. They're both Knife River flint. But again, this was found in Nebraska. And if you lay them on top of each other, they're almost identical.
Now,
so it's just very fascinating.
These have a signature, and they say that they're replicas. I understand that you and Tom replicate these artifacts.
Yes.
Talk to us about that.
Okay, so actually Tom does the business, I do the work.
Oh, so you're the napper.
Well, it's not napping. These are lithic casts. They're actually what we use is a orthodontic resin. So it's a really hard plastic.
Okay.
And we got into this about 2 years ago, maybe 2.5 years ago. When we got the business, we did get numerous, about probably 750, 800 molds.
Oh, wow.
And it was started by we got those molds, if you traced it back to a gentleman by the name of Milford Hansen, and he was I don't know if he was an archaeologist or an amateur archaeologist, but he worked with the University of Wyoming.
Okay.
And so in very well-known sites in Wyoming that they were excavating, then he would do the molds.
Oh,
so
okay.
we have a wealth of information and molds from very well-known type sites like the Agate Basin type site. I referred to the Hudson Ming type site, and which will lead me into one of the values, I think, of these lithic casts and replicas that we sell to or work with our universities.
Sure.
And they are very interested in having replicas for study purposes, you don't have to worry about breaking.
Right.
Also, like many of these, the actual artifacts are housed at the University of Wyoming or the Smithsonian, and so the students would have to go there to study them.
And we do this so they have a way to see what they are studying so they can continue their education so they can then go out and become archaeologists, right? I mean, just a continuation of the experience.
And one of the things that I try to do in my replication, which I think it's evolved over time, is to try to make them look as close to the original as possible. Not that it's always necessary, but it's nice to know this is pretty much what it looked like.
So these are all replicas.
These are all replicas.
You know, had I not known that, I would not. I mean, not that I'm an archaeologist by any stretch, but I've been doing these shows for 7 or 8 years. I've got a little bit of an eye for it. You're doing a really good job.
Thank you.
These are really, really good.
Well, and as you, let's see, where's my Eden? I have a replica. So here's a replica of that Eden.
Right down there.
And so it's pretty close.
Oh, very close. This is a way for you to help new archaeologists, but there's another component to archaeology, and it deals with the amateurs and the professionals.
Absolutely.
Working together, that collaboration. One needs the other, I think.
I think so too.
There was a time when I think the pros didn't really want to work with the amateurs because they felt maybe it was beneath them.
Right.
But that's different now. Is that your experience as well?
Absolutely. And one of the values of our family, and my son is also a collector and into archaeology, is the value of not just having the points because they're beautiful, and is what we can learn from them. And so making our collection open to students or professors or universities to study, and what can they learn from that. Right. So there are numerous archaeologists that we have a relationship with, but I also know that there are some that don't value collectors because we're robbing them, or we're taking
that's
them
the
from
feeling
where
they
were.
have.
That's the feeling they have.
Right.
Although I think there are a lot of archaeologists that are working to try to rebuild that relationship because they see the value. Lots of times sites are discovered not by professional archaeologists, but by amateur archaeologists.
Yeah. The weekender that goes
The
out.
weekender, right. In fact, we have found some sites that if we find them, we will turn them over or make the professional archaeologists aware of those so that potentially they can be studied or it can be studied.
Well, sure, and that's how you extend that shaking hand, with the professional community. And that's how you're going to rebuild that relationship, honestly.
And I think the value of these kind of shows, the Stone Age fair shows, and Scott does a great job of making connections with his professionals and inviting them here and making them aware so that they can build relationships with collectors, because and the other aspect is the importance of the documentation. Having collectors know that it's important to keep some records of where you found it and where it is, and so that they can learn from them.
Absolutely. And through PTCI and this show, and we've done several shows with Scott, and we always try to make that at least a point of one of the shows. At some point during the show, the importance of, if you find it, map it, let someone know, so that it's not just lost to history and put in your pocket, but that somebody knows where it was found and what it was. So it's critically important, as far as I'm concerned.
And again, we have had over the years, I don't know, 20, 30, 40 different students. We have a lot of students that come and record the collection and study whether they're Folsom points, Clovis points. Most of our collection is the prehistoric, the paleo.
Right.
Not most of our collection, but our interest. So that's what we really value and look for. But also sites. We have site frames that have a, when you bring them to the show, people, they aren't as eye-catching because they're broken pieces or, you know, tools. So unless you're an archaeologist and you really are into, or
Right.
an amateur archaeologist and you want to study that, they aren't as interesting as in shows.
Right, but still important
That's right.
nonetheless.
So if we, you know, find or go to a field, we will keep that field, all that what we collect in that same place. And, you know, we'll store it. This is this hill, so that they can be studied.
Right.
And I think that's a very important piece that I hope collectors, if they haven't, that they start to do.
Right.
And I think the more that we do that as amateur archaeologists or collectors, the more the professional archaeologists will value that and make a relationship, a collaborative relationship.
Oh, absolutely. Well, I want to thank you, and because I didn't realize that this was a thing. I mean, I knew there were some people that made some replicas, but I didn't realize that this was happening.
Well, there aren't very many people that do it.
There must not be,
and
because I haven't heard of it.
No, there aren't very many people that really do this a lot. It is time consuming. You know, it's not probably a business that you make a lot of money in, but we're both retired, and so our goal isn't to make a living from it. It really is for education and enjoyment. You know,
Kind of a way to give back too, right?
to give back.
Yeah.
You know, we have some people that want casts made because if they come to a show, they might have the cast so that it isn't broken, or, you know, it's safer
Oh, of their piece.
of their piece.
Oh,
Yes.
yeah, okay.
So
Well, I really appreciate everything that you've told us. Is there anything, on the way out, is there anything you want to leave our viewers with, something that you personally feel is super importante?
just that the connection to our past is I get a lot of enjoyment and reflection, and as we look at these stone tools or replicas of these stone tools, that, you know, those people, that was how they sustained life.
That's all they had.
That was all they had, and so there seems to be a connection with, wow, you know, this helped. I mean, this is how they lived, and this tool was important to them.
I like that.
And
That's
so-
that's good. That's really good. It's what
So
they had.
it creates kind of a spiritual feeling of this has power because it was life sustaining.
Absolutely.
Or it created, you know, the beauty also, as you think people made these artifacts, there are ones that, you know, they didn't have to make it beautiful, but all of us as humans get some joy from beauty.
Yeah, they
And
didn't have to, but sometimes they did.
Absolutely.
Because we're humans.
That's right.
Well, thank you so
So,
much. I
thank you
really
very
appreciate
much.
it. All right, we've got Dan Bussey with us, and his wife is off camera. She was going to talk, but now she doesn't want to talk, so we're not going to make her talk, are we?
Okay.
You've got this case of artifacts, and we were looking at it earlier. And at first glance, it's a good collection, but there's importance here. Tell us the story.
Well, I brought this cache encouraged by friends and some of the other members here. It's somewhat different because it's considered a Clovis cache. I found it in a pasture in 1968. One small spot of one of the blades was exposed, and 3 days later we found this many pieces.
Which one was the first piece?
This piece, the reverse side of this piece, was showing a spot about the size of a dime.
And you spotted that?
And I spotted that when I was marking a fence, and from that I opened up a little spot with my pocket knife thinking it was an arrowhead, and it turned out to be that blade. And from
It's
that,
ginormous.
yeah,
It's huge.
one blade led to another because I could see one below it and I could hear one click on it, and we just kept going. And then,
Did your heart just...
yeah, I was very excited. I have been an arrowhead collector since I was a kid. My dad plowed much of that land with a team of horses and a walking plow, so he started finding arrowheads when he was a kid.
Mm-hmm.
I just sort of grew into that, as most of us do,
Sure.
but had never come across anything similar to this.
Yeah, this is
I knew that it was unusual, and people have told me we've seen pictures, but to see it up close and personal is another experience. Anyway, it led to quite a long time of finding someone who thought it was relevant, and I'm not sure that I even felt that it was at the beginning because it was different than anything I had seen. Rob Bonnickson, who was the director of early man studies at the University of Maine, was the first to fly down from Maine to look at this collection of artifacts and was pretty interested. From that, it led to Jack Hoffman leading a number of college students working on this site 3 different times from Kansas University.
And they actually went out and did a gridded dig?
We did a gridded dig. We did about 3 to 4 weeks at a time, and he did a lot of paperwork. You have a sample of it right there.
Is this it?
That's an example of this blade with all the refits. And the refits are smaller pieces that fit on that blade that were taken from that blade. And every artifact in this case has been used.
Really?
It was all used for different purposes. The large blade is a blade that carries some red ochre on it. It has been termed Clovis. It has been studied by, besides Bonnickson and Jack Hoffman, David Kilby, who has done a book on Clovis caches, has included this as one of his major caches.
You're kidding.
In his book.
That's great.
So we have used it more for study than anything.
Wow.
It's not on display full time. It lends itself to study because of its use and because of its similarity to some other caches that are Clovis caches, one in Montana called the Anzac site, and certainly Blackwater Draw, which is the type site for Clovis, and that's in New Mexico.
Right.
At Clovis. And so we have used it for comparison studies and flaking studies and many other things. And I'm not the guy who's done the studying. It's been those professors mostly.
Sure.
We've probably had, Lynn has been a major part of this, partly because of apple pie. She's made all of the archaeologists that stay at our place apple pie.
Oh, you had me confused.
Does that make sense?
It does make sense now.
So, yeah, one thing she just reminded me, Jack Hoffman, after studying it and working on it, and I need to bring this up because we have catalogs there, and the one that's open, that you can, that catalog in the front of it was printed to accompany this cache and the other items in that catalog, and one side of that is printed in French and one in English, and this collection went to Solutre, France for 1 year and was compared there with artifacts from Western Europe.
You're kidding.
Because there is a similarity.
Now, how can that be?
Well, I would have to ask you that, because we're not quite sure.
I don't know, but I'm really interested now because I'm French.
Yeah,
So-
okay. The feeling is that the similarity between these and Western European artifacts lends itself to the idea that the peoples in some way are connected. And
Okay.
what that means probably is that some of the people that made this may have learned how to make it from ancestors that were from Western Europe. Now, whether Beringia is the access point for those people or some other route, that's still up for debate. But it did spend a year in France. And then it spent a year at the Museum of Anthropology at Kansas University.
Cool.
Most of the rest of the time it resides in a vault and comes out for study and, in this case, for display.
I feel very fortunate just to be seeing it then. I mean, not many people get to really see it, do they?
No. There are tremendous numbers of beautiful artifacts at this show, and you don't have to go very far up and down the alley here or the aisle here to know that. This is a little bit different, and its main purpose and its main value is for study.
It's really neat. I have to know, I have to ask this. How big of an area was I mean, in the field? You know, you're talking about a farm field, right?
Yeah, it was in a pasture, and everything was in an area approximately a meter square.
You're kidding.
About 40 inches square.
Wow.
And about 12 to 14 inches deep, except for the one little washout spot that showed the exposed area that helped me find it. And had I not seen that, this would still be residing under a lot of lush soil in western Kansas without anybody bothering it.
Exactly. The sheer luck value of finding something like this in a 3 foot by 3 foot
Yeah.
square.
Well, my family, and Lynn would attest to this, have accused me of looking down most of my life, and so I was looking down when I found it, obviously.
I
And
get accused of that all the time, and I'm like, hey, I'm looking for rocks. I don't know.
I look for arrowheads. I've looked for arrowheads all my life, and this was more than an arrowhead.
Yes, sir.
So
Very
about
much
26 pounds of artifacts here.
26 pounds.
Yeah.
Now, have you, when you've had the pieces out of the case, some of them fit together, yeah? I mean,
Yes, they do. And we have two types of tools here. These are bifaces, these large biface leaf-shaped tools, and these are the flakes that were used mostly as knives. Those are some flakes, those small ones in the corner, that are just peripheral flakes that were used in manufacture. These blades on this side, we call them blades, have an unusual characteristic in that they are all convex, or nearly all convex in shape, triangular in cross-section, and have all been used on both ends and the sides for different purposes. So they've all been used, but they are similar to the type site blades at Blackwater Draw and also several other Clovis sites. So they have a characteristic that is different from the bifaces. And bifaces were probably used as cutting tools, chopping tools. These were mostly scrapers, knives as well, and various purposes. And this was a total toolkit.
my goodness, what a find. Yeah, when I first walked by it this morning, I thought, yeah, that's cool. But now now that's really cool.
Well, it is different. There are a number of caches across North America. All of those caches are different, and this one certainly is different. The material this is from, I should mention, is all Niobrara jasper. And Niobrara jasper is a type of flint or a type of stone that comes from probably about 100 miles from where this was found.
Oh, really?
We're not completely sure. We know there are some sites in Gove County, Kansas, probably in southwest Nebraska near Cambridge, where this type of stone is found. But it is all Niobrara jasper. And it varies in color, but that probably is all because of just variation as it's found in the veins.
Sure.
So
Sure. Thank you so much for sharing this with us.
you're welcome.
I had no idea.
Well,
at all.
I would like to think this museum is a great venue for this,
Oh,
and
wow.
the interest here and the other artifacts here are just astonishing. So I don't
Yeah.
have to tell you that because
No.
you've been up and down the aisle.
Exactly.
So,
And this is like, I usually tell our viewers, this is one of my very favorite things to come to year in and year out because I always learn something new, invariably.
well, that's the thing about artifacts, and it's important, I think, for us to keep artifacts in circulation as far as study. I think it's important to preserve them. I think it's important for us to study from them and learn about the people who were here before us. And in this case, it would seem to be people who were here quite a long time ago.
Quite a long time ago. I'll bet your field is one of the most documented little sites in the world.
It just looks like a grass pasture today.
Really?
Yeah, and that's what we want to keep it as.
Yeah.
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 Yeah, it has grown back over since the excavation by Kansas University. Obviously, there would still be some pieces there,
I would have to think.
but it would take a lot of meticulous work and screening and a lot of, it is not an easy task to complete a dig on a situation like this where we're looking for parts of other artifacts and new pieces, and so they're never really complete, but we think we have enough to start to work.
So it occurs to me that I don't know the what. I think I would want to know is the why was it there? Was it a kill site? Was it a campsite for just a small family for a week or something? Or
That's a question we still don't have a great answer for.
Best guess?
We may not even have a good answer, but it probably was placed there to come back to use because they are all usable tools. They are all tools that were used. We know that. They were probably stored because the weight of 26 pounds, if you don't have a pretty good way of transporting them,
That's true.
is probably going to allow for a return and use at a later time. Whether they were marked, whether they were placed there on purpose or lost, that's not, there's no absolute answer to that.
So
The
it
guess
was-
is that the guess, and it has to be something of an educated guess, but that they were placed there on purpose to come back and use.
that makes the most sense, probably.
And it seems to be a work site. People say, well, was it a burial? Was it this or was it that? Ceremonial. It probably was just a work site, a site where they made these, used them, brought them back together, and had them there for another use. It seems that it was complementary to a way of life where your main object was to find food.
Yeah.
And they spent time making and working to do that, and I think that's what it was. We see no indication otherwise. Something that we find later might change that.
Sure.
So it is in flux. It's not an absolute all the time, but they're great fun, and they've created a great deal of interest across the study of archaeology for human existence in this country, and we hope they can be used in that way for a long time.
Me too. I do, sincerely. I really appreciate you sharing this with us.
I appreciate the opportunity to talk about them. As you can tell, I like to talk about them.
you
So
like it a little bit.
yeah.
Now, do you still go
it's
out and
great
look in
fun.
this pasture?
Not very often.
No.
I have kind of just decided, we have a lot of things to do. We have grandkids that are keeping us busy, and I don't walk as often as I used to. Occasionally I do, and maybe someday I will say I'm going to spend a couple days down there and see what I can come up with.
Right.
We'll just see how that goes.
Well, if you ever do decide that, give me a shout, because I hear your wife has a really good apple pie, and I
Yes.
might come up there and help
Yeah,
you.
yeah, yeah. Vance Haynes flew from Arizona back when we were doing a conference at the house, so to speak. We were working at the house on this cache, and he came and he said it was the rocks that brought me, but it'll be the apple pie that brings me back.
There you
go. That's been a bit of a. It's been a bit of the history of this was her cooking. So
That's fun. That's fun.
most of this has been very enjoyable.
Oh, sure.
We've met great people being at a place like this, is the same as that. I mean, we've seen great things, and we've done things that we would not have ever done had I not stumbled onto this little spot. So,
Probably so.
yeah.
Changed the course of your life.
It did. It changed everything. And we have 3 kids and 8 grandkids, and we're not totally sure that they're very interested in this, although there's some interest. But it changed how we looked at things and what we did for the rest of our life after 1968. And we were not yet married. Lynn and I have been married 48 years, and we weren't married at the time, but she's grown to be a part of this whole thing, and it's a good thing because I forget things, and I need help with organization, and she's been a terrific part of it, and without it I'd probably just still have them in a vault.
There you go. Well, thank you for sharing. I really have appreciated it.
Okay, you're welcome.
So we are here now with Steve Kagan, and he, as you can tell, he's a military guy. He searches military, pre-Civil War military sites.
Yes.
It's an interesting, different look than what we're used to. Well, can you tell us about it?
Like you said, the time period is from the 1830s to 1860s, pre-Civil War. I specifically center on dragoon soldiers. Originally, they were out of Jefferson Barracks, out of St. Louis, Missouri. So, and that started in 1833.
And the dragoons are?
Dragoon, well, they're kind of like the cavalry was during the Civil War, but just 30 years before.
Okay.
That's what the dragoons basically were. And they were able to fight on horseback as well as on foot.
Okay.
So they were kind of a combination type military that had multiple abilities to travel and then fight either on horseback or on foot.
Okay. So you go and you search these sites and you collect your artifacts and you document them like
Yep.
all good archaeologists do.
Yes.
Can you, in this area here, do you have a favorite, something that you want to highlight and talk about? Something that you found that you're just like above the moon?
Well, a lot of the artifacts I find, for instance, this display case right here will have dragoon buttons from the actual soldiers, but then also you'll have a mixed in with some early fur trade.
Sure.
This was an ear wheel. You can actually see the loop.
I see that.
And you'll see an artifact here called a cartouche knife handle. It's an early fur trade knife handle made out of brass. So when I find the silver mixed in with the military, I know I had an Indian guide.
There you go.
I know I had an Indian, and when I actually find those camps, I document where they were found. So it will give me a placement of where the guide was in relation to where the soldiers were. And the guides were never encamped with the soldiers. They were outside the camp.
Ah, wonder why.
I have no idea. That's just what the journals and the diaries always reference to, that the Indians were, the guides were always outside the military. They never associated with them. For whatever,
even though they were guiding them and
even though they were
more or less protecting them from the elements, you know. Or,
they knew the land better than anyone else,
right?
And that's why they had those Indian guides. They were very important. But as far as to camp in the same proximity, they stayed. There's evidence has shown there's specific separation.
Right.
Overnight.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So I see where you tie this together. Then I didn't think about the guide aspect of it. It's pretty good.
Yeah.
It's pretty good.
Yeah.
What's the most interesting thing that you found of a native artifact at a pre-Civil War site?
Well,
I mean, this is all cool stuff.
a lot of the things I'll find. I wish there. Well,
we can go down further.
Actually, this would be.
Come on down.
This would be my.
It's in a case. So
yes.
It must be.
This was found right on top of the ground, but it was found right in the smack in the middle of a dragoon camp.
Really?
And I actually had it on video when I actually found it. But this is an early stone, 3/4 slant, grooved axe, and lying right on top of the ground, in the middle of a military camp. So that axe had been there long before the soldiers were there, but the soldiers walked right over it, and they didn't.
Wow.
You know, so that's kind of an interesting.
That is interesting.
Artifact.
That really is interesting.
Yeah.
That's coinage, isn't it?
Yes, those are early half dimes, an 1838 dime. I do find a lot of coins in military camps. What I like to do once I do find a camp, I like to try to date the camp.
Sure.
Coins are a great way of dating a camp.
Absolutely, they're usually dated.
And they usually give a rough idea, not precisely, but a rough idea. Also, the ceramics or the glassware will help to identify the age of the camp. And so what I enjoy doing is when I document that, I base it on what my journal, or not my journal, but what my research in the diaries, reading their diaries, based on the time frame, and base it on what I actually find out there. Put them together and see if they match.
Right.
And usually it'll give me a good idea of how old that campsite is.
That's great. Yeah, we were talking off camera before, but you have a packet of documentation under each of these cases.
That's correct.
I think that's amazing. I think that's brilliant, because at any time, if someone has a specific question, you say, well, let's look, let's
There
see.
you go.
Oh, here it is.
It's all right there.
That's really important.
It's a way of, I know some guys do it differently. They'll put it in their journals, which I also put it in my journal.
Sure.
I keep a daily or a weekly journal of all my finds, but what's in the packets is actually hand-drawn maps of the camp as I found it. And I can precisely know, based on where the artifacts were found, I can know where the soldier slept, where his fire pit was, where he parked the wagons, where he parked the horses, and if they had an Indian guide with them, based all upon where those artifacts were found, and drawing that little map out. And I slide that information with the actual display case.
That's great. Now, as I'm just listening and absorbing what you're telling me, do you consider yourself more archaeologist or historian?
A little bit of both.
Right?
A little bit of both.
Yeah.
It's been an incredible hobby I've done for over 37 years now. It started out just like anyone else, just curious with history. You enjoy the history aspect of it. But me, I got into I wanted something earlier. I wanted something more, because I read a lot of books, read a lot of military history books, and I for some reason, I got attached to the early Dragoon era, from the 1830s to 1860s. And the area that I live in, of course, you have Fort Leavenworth to the north of me, about 40 miles. You have Fort Scott to the south of me, about 90 miles. And you have Fort Riley about 117 miles to the west of me.
So a lot
I'm
of military
smack in the
action,
middle.
right?
Exactly.
You're at ground zero for.
Yes.
And this is off the subject, but where does Daniel Boone fit into these dates?
Yeah, well.
In here somewhere, right?
Yes, it does. Actually, I believe it was his son or one of the, actually was at Fort Leavenworth. I can't recall right off the bat.
I put you on the spot.
Yeah.
It's just I'm weird and
But yeah, there's some. A lot of my research is involved in just some of these different characters that you see here. This guy right here, George Catlin, he was a painter. He lived from this period, but he actually went out on expeditions with the Dragoon soldiers, and he wrote a journal, a wonderful 2-book volume journal. That's where I get a lot of my information. He wrote it out in such a way that it gave me a good idea of where to go look.
Sure.
Or at least a starting point.
Well, bless his heart for getting that stuff on paper.
And plus the paintings that he painted a lot of the major Indian chiefs all across the United States. And he did a wonderful job of actually taking that it wasn't a snapshot, it was a painting.
Sure.
But it was of that period.
Sure.
And it helped me visualize what they looked like back then. And what the surrounding area looked like as well.
That's great. It's you're doing the things now sort of similar to what he did then that might help people 100 years from now.
There you
for
go.
whatever they're wanting to do, whatever research they have.
Yep.
You want to move down and show, because this is an extended.
Yes. There's I will say this. Of 37 years of looking for this stuff, I've only got 2 gold coins.
Oh, really?
Now there are some guys who have done it for over 50 years and they found no gold coins.
Sure.
So I'm very fortunate to at least have found 2.
And you found them because why? Because the government paid with gold, or
it was in circulation, and
Right.
in some cases the government did pay in gold.
Really?
In this case, this encampment, actually I got the display cases color coded.
I see
The
that.
green one are all together.
Okay.
And then there's a display case over there that's green right there.
here.
It's all from the same campsite.
Okay.
This particular one was very unique in that there was, believe it or not, what actually got me onto the site, I saw visibly on top of the ground bits and pieces of broken whiskey bottle flask.
Oh, that's a good telltale.
Whiskey. So in this camp, they were probably gambling. I would bet, and they lost their money right there while they were drinking away. And then, of course, after they were done, they would throw the bottles in the fire pit.
Sure.
And but that surface stuff. The whiskey bottle, the broken
I'll be
glass,
darned.
is what led me to find this site.
So it's important when you're out looking, if you see something that's out of the ordinary, say a piece of a flask or a piece of
Sure.
a bottle or something, to know that might mean something.
There might be something early on that site.
And I see you've got all sorts of, axe heads, you've got all...
Oh, yes.
These are all, now are these military or
These are strictly military.
Okay.
Believe it or not, they look like ordinary tools that we use today.
That's a mill file.
But I can honestly say these were found in a dragoon camp.
That's crazy.
Dates
Now these would
about-
be horse hoof work?
Yes, yes. If you can look real closely, there's lines for the filing.
Sure.
Different grades of filing.
Sure.
And of course, this is a heavier grade filing, and it's actually got someone's mark on it.
Oh, yeah.
So you got different style of filing. But
That's great.
this was actually found in that camp where I showed you the silver brooch.
Oh, okay.
That brooch was found where I found a lot of wagon parts and a lot of these tools.
Oh, okay.
So the Indian guide was hauling. He was manning that wagon with the tools
Okay,
in the front.
Now something that occurs to me is, why were they left? Were they attacked maybe? Was there some sort of a battle maybe that happened there? Or
And this is only speculation. I was outside of a major fort about 15 to 20 miles, a day's journey. So by wagon,
Sure.
not by horse. By horse would be probably 20 to 30,
a little quicker, yeah.
give or take. But by wagon, 8 to 10 to 12 to 15 miles away from a major fort is a day's journey. My theory is, and what a lot of soldiers did, is as they neared their fort, they would discard a lot of their utensils, a lot of their tools, just to get replenished with brand new artifacts or brand new utensils.
Sure.
Because it's already been used up on a long expedition for hundreds of miles, and now they are nearing home, and these two axes right here were found stacked together just like this, right off of the side of the trail.
Really?
So they just discarded these, I guess, just in hopes of getting reassigned new equipment.
I'll bet you're right.
It's a theory.
Dump the weight, we're going to get new stuff, kick it off the side.
There you go.
And let's get home.
That's my theory, and that's what I
think it's as plausible as any.
It could be.
And it actually makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
What else do we have here?
Well, here's one of my special items. It's a heart-shaped martingale, but it's made of brass, and on the front it's stamped the number 1 and then a letter D. First Dragoon.
Oh.
So this is a very special piece. And where this actually sat was on the horse, the breast of the horse.
Oh,
it had
okay.
2 leather straps come toward the front of the breast of the horse, and it would have the martingale right there. That's what this is.
I'll be darned.
And it identifies specifically the dragoon, and it was the first dragoon that came out of Fort Leavenworth.
Were they all hearts, or was this done special for that particular soldier?
They were all hearts.
They were all hearts.
They were all hearts. Some are plain, without any lettering. Some actually have the company lettering. I've got down there a letter D on it for Company D.
That is neat.
But the unique thing about this, and you can't see it very well, you would have to shine a flashlight, but right in the center is a hand-stamped number 19. And they actually took a hand punch it and punched the number 19. Okay, my theory is that each horse equipment was assigned to each individual soldier, and they had it was through a numbering system.
Sure.
You had number 19 martingale, and the saddle number 19, and the whatever.
Makes perfect sense.
So but I've never been able to look into the records to determine who had number 19. But that's something that would be really cool.
That would be great.
If you can find that.
If you could find the person's name, that would be awesome. If you ever do, let me know, and we'll include it with this documentary.
There you go.
Retroactively, we'll do an amendment. We'll.
Sure. It would be awesome to be able to trace it back to the actual soldier that was assigned number
It really
19
would.
during that time period.
It really would. That's you really have dug into this, haven't you?
I have not only dragoon activity, I also find a lot of fur trade artifacts from the 1790s to early 1800s. Doing what I do when I walk the open fields, you occasionally will find early fur trade locations.
Oh yeah.
And I don't have them on display here, but that's another fascinating aspect.
That is. Yeah, that's
that I find.
What is it? The Jones and Plummer Trail, fur trail that goes through Perryton and up.
Yeah.
And Scott has talked at length about that. There's
Sure.
there's a fur trading trail that comes
Sure.
through this general area of the world.
Absolutely.
And okay, so I'm looking at these. Mm-hmm. Are these lead?
They are made of lead. They actually have 3 rings on them. They call these 3-ring mini balls. Mm-hmm. And they were made in the 1850s, but during the Civil War they were widely made or widely used. These are called 69 caliber 3-ring mini balls.
I would not want to get shot with one of those.
And the encampment was dragoon because I specifically found dragoon buttons in this encampment. So whatever weapon they had, that weapon fired a 69 caliber 3-ring mini ball.
It's a big bore.
It is.
That's a big bore. The reason that my eye is fascinated on these is because just the other day I found a shape like this of a black stone. I saw it because I watch the ground.
Sure.
I'm a rock guy.
Yeah.
I saw it and I thought, I've never seen this before. I put it in my pocket. I was going to bring it today. But have you ever seen anything like that in a black stone?
In a black stone, I have not.
Nor have
I will say that in military camps, soldiers were quite bored. They had a lot of time on their hands when they had to sit in camp, so they would take lead and they would actually carve lead to make different figures, such as chess pieces,
Right.
or any kind of figures. And I didn't bring them today, but I've got multiple different types of figures that the soldiers would actually carve out of lead. But as far with the black stone,
I was going to bring it, and I've asked a few people, and they're like, oh, I don't know. Looks like.
To me, that's more of maybe a prehistoric type artifact.
But what would it be for?
I have no idea.
I'm kicking myself for not bringing it. Bad, Sean.
Right.
Is on the way out, do you want to leave our viewers with anything?
Yes, just the artifacts that I have found over the years, I keep a very good record of where they were found, the location, the property owners' names who've given me permission on that piece of
Because permission
property.
is important.
Absolutely. And just keeping the documentation of the individual artifacts with the collection is very, very necessary. You got to do that. It gives it so much more meaning to have all that put together like that.
I agree.
So
I agree.
I think that's very responsible, and it's good that after I'm long gone, other people will be able to enjoy that same artifact just like I did when I found it, based on the information that I have kept with that artifact.
Well, I applaud that you for doing it, and thank you very much for sharing your stuff with us.
Enjoyed it.
Thanks. Okay, we have Winston Ellison, and Winston is here from Fair Oaks Ranch, Texas. And when we first got here this morning, Scott said, okay, you've got to go talk to this guy. He's got something neat. So we're here to talk to you. And I think you were directing us to something up here.
Right. The first thing I would say is this frame here is from one site. Many years ago, I started trying to put together all the points that came from this site, which was a large sand screening operation for concrete San Antonio area. So this is one of 7 frames with Paleo period points that are from that particular site. This other frame here is probably the most difficult type of point type to get in Texas that is complete and not broken. The example in the very bottom here is the largest known example of that type point, which is called Andice, very early archaic period point. The piece above it is sort of a famous piece. It belonged to Dr. J.T. Patterson at the University of Texas in Austin, who is considered to be in some respects the founder of Texas archaeology. He was there in the 1930s and wrote a book on corner tang knives. This piece in the center here is called a bell blade. Dr. Patterson dropped that piece in 1941 and broke it.
Oh, no.
So that's, you can see the break up here on the point. And that's a very historic piece.
From what year do you think?
He broke it in 1941. That's when he actually broke the piece, and it was in his collection there at the University of Texas. So anyway, that's sort of a historic piece. This is a book we did on the finest artifacts of prehistoric Texas. And this has been out a few years. We've still got some copies left, not a lot, of this particular book. Down here, if we move at the other end down here, this is a frame of various Paleolithic points from Texas and the Southwest. About 90% of these are Texas, the others are generally New Mexico. And they're various different types of Paleolithic period points from Texas and New Mexico area. The other frame here is all Clovis points. And these are generally from Texas and New Mexico area. There's nothing else, nothing from back east. This is all Texas and New Mexico. And so that's the pieces I brought to the show this particular
So
trip.
Winston, how long have you been collecting? I mean, some of these are you found?
A few of them I've found, but these points are generally rare enough that it's very difficult to find very many of these. Mm-hmm. And what I have done over the years is when collections become available, I purchased those collections and then kept certain specific pieces out of those collections, because there's just no way that in a lifetime, if you hunted every day of your life, that you could put together this kind of collection.
That's what I wondered, but
Yeah.
I'm glad to know that you're actually a collector. You go out and look.
Right.
These are great collections. I took a minute to look through your book, and this is you helped write this book, right?
I did most of the work.
You did most of this book.
Right.
I don't know if you sell these or whatever.
Yes, we do.
These
they're
are
available.
fantastic pictures.
And they're full color and full size. They're exact size.
Oh,
They're
these
two
are exact
size.
size.
Right.
Oh, I gotcha.
Yeah.
This is amazing. The detail of these photographs, these artifacts, and I would assume then that every number correlates to information about them.
In the index, right? In the back. Yes, exactly.
That is.
Now the only downside to this kind of a book is that if you do high quality photography and you use high quality paper and you use high quality bindery, the cost
Is a little
becomes
high.
exorbitant. Now, when we finished that book, we did it at a nonprofit, and that book is $100. We got $99.76 in each book, and then of course we have to pay the governor's tax, even though it is a nonprofit.
But you know what? This is a high-end book. Feels like it's leather bound. Man, would be one to have if you want to be able to see the collections and the examples of these artifacts. What about your other books here?
Those are just books I thought people might have interest in.
Sure.
This is one of the better books that has to do with the Plains Indians and many of the clothing items that they had. This is just a book here that is, I guess, the best guide to the current to artifact collectors. It tells them the types of pieces that are out there. It's done by two of the preeminent archaeologists.
Now, it's
around.
Texas. Is it East Texas, North Texas, or just all of Texas?
Of Texas
All
State,
of Texas.
yeah. This is just a book on the spiral mound here that I happen to have, and I thought somebody might want it. Of course, naturally, I've got these books in my own collection.
Sure.
And the other books up there is Dr. And I got to know this guy, and I was very pleased I did. Dr. W.W. Newcomb at the University of Texas wrote this book many, many years ago. Mm-hmm. And one of the things that stands out about being a good book is when many, many years goes by and no one writes a book on the same topic. And so this book was out 40 years before anybody dared write another book on the Texas Indian Texas.
Must have been pretty substantial then.
It was. He was a fine gentleman, a very good teacher.
Mm-hmm.
You got to check out that area.
And then, finally, a few years ago, a guy finally wrote another book on the same topic.
Oh, took all that time.
Yeah, finally wrote another book on the same
Now, how
topic.
do the two compare?
That one, to me, Dr. Newcomb's book is still the best.
Still then.
Yeah, but this one has other kinds of information in it that he didn't have. Mm-hmm. This is a book that was written about digging into South Texas prehistory, also with Dr. Hester. Mm-hmm. That's a very good guide to prehistory. And this is the old book that was written on the Midland site.
Oh, okay.
That was found so many years ago. And so these are just books that I thought somebody might have interest in. I have in my library.
Now, it is apparent to me that you have a vast knowledge of archaeology, but I need to know what made you get into it. What precipitated you to be?
Well, as it says in the prefix to the book, my grandfather had American Indian heritage, mm-hmm. and my grandmother did too, but different tribes. And so outside of the German, I probably have maybe an eighth American Indian. Uh-huh. And as a little boy, I found a little point out in the fields and brought it in and showed it to my granddad, and he says, you know, you ought to have a natural interest in those things since you're families. And so that started when I was 5 years old.
There you go.
And I've collected ever since, and it's been a great hobby. Been a lot of fun, and met a lot of really nice people. I really specialize in typology more than I do authentication, mm-hmm. and I won't authenticate anything for anyone, but I'll give them my opinion free of charge.
Sure.
And there are a tremendous number of artifacts floating around that are not ancient.
Oh, really?
That are being portrayed as being ancient.
Oh, really?
And so people have to be very cautious as they go out and acquire these things. Anything that achieves value that's collectible, the con men will come out of the woodwork.
Sure.
And they'll bring these things out and try to get people's money.
Sure.
And
sure.
so, but that's basically the whole thing. Again, I'm an avocational individual. My degree's not in archaeology, but I've studied this stuff all my life, and, mm-hmm. and I'm of my collection, I'm probably more proud of my book collection, which has about 2,000 different books in it that have to do with the Indians in America, and especially the Indian in Texas.
Sure. So
one thing that's been very nice the last number of years is if I need to do any research on anything, I don't have to leave my home. Mm-hmm. The books are there. And that took a lot of years to put that together as well.
Right. Of course, there is something to be said for actually talking to a knowledgeable person and sharing some experiences. But I agree, there's a lot of written documentation that's very valuable.
Right.
I have to know, what tribes were your ancestry from?
Well, one of my granddad's ancestry had Seminole.
Seminole. Okay.
They came from Tampa Bay, Florida.
Oh, okay.
In the late 1800s. My grandmother's ancestry was Cherokee, and her family moved to Texas about 1846.
1846.
So it was Cherokee and Seminole.
Oh, neat. That's neat. I get a kick out of knowing that.
Well,
Is there anything else that you wanted to leave our viewers with? I think you're the last interview of the day, so you get the spotlight. You get
Not really, but it's a great hobby.
that was smart.
It's part of our history and part of the history of this country, and we need to do all we can to preserve it. We need to work. I encourage collectors to be proactive in trying to work with the professional archaeological community.
Absolutely.
We don't do as good a job of that in Texas as they do in some other states, and that's a fault of both sides. But we need to encourage people to work with the professionals and to respect each other. The problem is that those of us that are fortunate enough to have money are the ones who put these collections together, and these things are very, very expensive.
Yes, sir.
Well, the whole thing is that many times the archaeological community just doesn't have that reserve of money to do this. And so, since many of us have put these large collections together of this stuff, it should be used, and it should be used by the professionals.
Agreed.
And so, all I'm saying is that it makes sense for both sides to work together. And I complimented Scott earlier that I'm very, very pleased that he's going in that direction and trying to do that.
He does, and he's of that vein of thought.
Yeah, and it makes sense, and everybody can gain from that. And we need to, and it would be good for the future. There's so little we know about the Paleolithic people, for example, and there's so little that we probably can ever know about them. Everything is deteriorated about that they had here. The archaic people, there's a little bit more that can be learned about them. There's
Right.
a lot more that can be learned about the prehistoric people, the so-called bow and arrow people.
Right.
But we need to maximize what we can as far as information and not let it be destroyed.
I agree, and that's one of the reasons that we come here and that we do this show, because I am of that exact same thought.
Oh, good. That's great.
I really appreciate your,
Well, thank
your
you very
time.
much.
Thank you very
Thank
much.
you.
We've reached the end of another Stone Age fair here in Perryton, Texas at the Museum of the Plains. I want to personally thank the Corson Archaeological Research, Scott Brzezowski, the Museum of the Plains, and all the people that help with this. It's been a great day. We had some fantastic interviews. I learned a bunch of new things. We got a bunch of great cover of some amazing artifacts. We hope you enjoyed. We'll see you next year.